All right, we're back. Another week, Rush Hour podcast. I'm T Dub. This is Justin. What do we got
Episode
this week,
six.
Justin? Yeah,
Episode
episode
six.
six.
Exciting. Every
March
time we have another
Madness.
episode, I'm like, man, I'm glad we've been,
Yeah.
staying on track, keeping these things going. I know you were at I know March Madness is coming up, and for everyone who's like a huge fan of college sports, you're probably not as big of a fan as TW. Like, don't even try to go do a back
No,
and
they're
forth. And then
definitely
you're not.
bigger fans.
No,
Was that
no.
the
I
ACC
mean,
tournament?
you in the top 5% though.
Yeah, I'm
Maybe not the top one. You in the top 5%. But why don't you give me a little update on what you were doing like last week?
No, so I flew to watch Virginia play Boston College in the first round of the ACC tournament. It was a late game on Thursday. Pulled out a close win, which means I had to change my flight. For Mojo purposes, I assumed a loss. Had my flight leaving the next day, but we won, so I changed it to Saturday morning. And then we played NC State, who, they pulled it out at the end. We were actually up three with 5 seconds left, and we were on the free throw line, and we lost.
Oh my God.
One of those things, right? You're 5 seconds. If we make one free throw, it's over. We miss it, they run down, hit a three, and then they beat us in overtime.
Yeah. Oh my
Yeah,
God.
it's March Madness, man. It was exciting, but somehow we still made the tournament. We still made the NCAA tournament. We played tonight against Colorado State.
Colorado
Yeah,
State,
so-
right? Yeah, I
Yeah,
saw that.
it wasn't all for nothing, but yeah, it's exciting time. March Madness is like a religion to me. So this is my favorite time of year, no doubt, no question.
For sure. For sure.
So what's you wrote a couple? We're exchanging notes on what to talk about. You had TikTok ban.
Yeah.
The vote
I
for
feel
the
like-
TikTok ban. What do you think?
Yeah. It was the ban. The measure for the ban was passed in the House, so it goes on to the Senate now, and it's really interesting. I'm curious to see how you feel about this. I feel like it really just kind of snuck back up on us. I feel like there was all this noise made around banning TikTok, months ago. Actually, probably more than months ago. It was like, I don't know if it was like a year ago now, however long it was. And then it's kind of like you look at the news, like TikTok was banned in the House. You're like, what? Like, when did that even happen?
It definitely caught me by surprise. Like, this is still a thing. So what
Yeah.
what would this bill do? Like, have you done the research? Like, what actually happens if this goes through?
Yeah, so apparently, and just to give like, I think everybody kind of has a sense of the scope of TikTok and penetration within the U.S., but like, the app is used by 170 million Americans, right? So, very very high usage. People clearly love the product, within the U.S. But the sense that I get is, within that, basically with the ban in place, what it would do is, TikTok would have roughly 5 months to separate from ByteDance, which is the Chinese parent company, and that's kind of where a lot of the issues stem from. Is should this Chinese company own one of the most important products where people are spending all their time in the U.S. and do they have nefarious intentions, and how is data being collected, all that. But apparently, what the bill also does, in addition to have that stipulation around selling the company, it also lays out similar restrictions for any app that is controlled by foreign adversaries. So there are five. I think there are four. There are four companies that are known to be foreign adversaries, like in terms of, I guess, explicit kind of governmental. By our government and agencies, there are four countries that are foreign adversaries. So China, Iran, Russia, and North Korea. And so basically, any app that's kind of majority controlled by those foreign adversaries would then be banned. And if app stores violate these terms, then there'll be like 5,000 per user ban per app, which at the scale of these companies is a huge fine. And so in the case of TikTok, Apple, Google, they could potentially be on the hook for $850 billion in fines, right? If they were to
Gracious.
move forward. So obviously TikTok isn't happy about that. They're calling it an attack on First Amendment rights. They've launched a call to action campaign within the app, so out to 170 million Americans, and saying that, hey, this is going after your constitutional right for freedom of expression. This will damage businesses that rely on TikTok, and yeah, so it could be a big impact. So why are lawmakers cracking down on TikTok? Well, it seems like they perceive it to be a national security threat because the Chinese government could use its intelligence laws, could use its intelligence laws against ByteDance to, force its hand over to, to force them to. Basically, what's going on is, because the Chinese government could use its intelligence laws to force ByteDance to give over TikTok user data, policymakers are really worried that this information could then be used to identify intelligence targets or enable disinformation and propaganda campaigns. And so there's a big kerfuffle around all this happening. Now, the question is, will it pass in the Senate? So, it's already passed through the House. I think, the Senate, I don't think they necessarily have it on their docket to pass anytime soon, but there was, unlike what typically happens in Washington, there was pretty bipartisan support around banning it. So there's a chance. So I think maybe the bigger question is, well, one, I'm very curious to see what you think about this, and then I can provide my opinion as well. But then also, what does it kind of mean for social consumer space, creator economy space, generally one of these key players, can no longer operate within the U.S.
Yeah, hearing the sort of general rundown of, hey, they're banning an app because it's from China and China is a threat. It just makes me think of the U.S. talking about sort of China's wall garden, where they're always saying, "Oh, China censors all of its citizens, and they can't see all these things from America, and it's a crime." Now we're doing the exact same thing. So I just find it, I don't know, kind of hypocritical for us to say, hey, we're going to ban this thing. It would seem like education that to its user base based on capitalism would do the trick. If that doesn't, and people are still freely using TikTok knowing the potential danger it could cause, then that's that's what freedom is to me, and not banning it. But I understand why they're doing it. It seems like more of a threat than anything, than something that will get passed. But maybe I'm wrong. Trump became president, so what do I know? He could do it again. So, my initial reaction is it's kind of funny. Like we're gonna ban something from China, even though we always make fun of China banning things from the U.S., and we're gonna turn around and do the same. I think it's pretty comical.
To play devil's advocate on your point, I think one of the other kind of pushbacks for people that aren't necessarily as concerned about the privacy piece, but are concerned about kind of just competition and access of products in other countries. They say, hey, well, China doesn't allow a lot of, U.S. social media products there, so why should we allow theirs here? What would you, do you have any thoughts around that, or push back on that?
No, I mean, it's kind of a tick for attack, right? Like, who's going to be the bigger company in that argument, right? Like, you could both play this game and hurt consumers, or you could just say, hey, America is, be the sort of beacon of light here, and say America is a place of freedom. We will allow you, even if it is a Chinese company, will allow you to do it and see and maybe, I don't know. To me, it seems like that would be the path that I would expect. But then again, I don't know what our plans are.
So that leads to the question of, so where do you come out? Ban or no ban?
Oh, I'm with not banning it. Mm-hmm. Take away the fact that I am Chinese, but I don't have any affiliation with China. But still, to me, it feels like, hey, do the education, explain to people why it's bad. If they still continue to use it, that is on your educational system. And you know what I mean? Like if we're gonna tell, I'm not a fan of banning sugary drinks. Just educate people. If they continue to take sugary drinks, that's that's freedom, right? Like, you have the choice to make these decisions. It is up to the government to inform you of the pros and cons of your choices, and then you're free to make whichever one you want. If it's truly a grave danger to our whatever security, I get it. If it gets to that point, then sure, go ahead, ban it. But it doesn't seem like it's going down that path. Is more of a threat. But what I don't know is far and wide on the data breach stuff.
No,
what about you? What are your thoughts?
I think where I come out, it's my where I come in as a bit more in a gray area. On the one hand, I've been in social consumer forever like you, and just seeing platforms kind of outpace, the Facebooks and Instagrams and all these other platforms, and just have a product that's like that really delivers on its value proposition, which is to provide entertainment to people. Whether that's good or not, that's got to open to the market to decide that, and it's done it better than any player out there. I think you got to respect that to a certain level, because it's incredibly hard to do, and it's incredibly hard to have staying power. That said, I don't have, a sense of the inner workings on how the algorithm works, and really haven't read through all the privacy and data restrictions and kind of where that's being shared or where that privacy goes. I think that, as we saw on Facebook, people can be swayed by the content that they see on these platforms. And I think that if it's unfettered and it's like, hey, we don't necessarily care what happens in the US, we're just kind of giving this entertainment product, but that people actually are leveraging that as a primary resource for kind of learning and news, et cetera, which for the younger generation it is. And there aren't really, there aren't really any stopgaps for how that's shared. I think you can get into, a tricky situation like we did in prior election, where there was a lot of disinformation out there that can, impact how people think. And I think it was the impetus between what, created a fairly sizable divide in the U.S. Coming out of last election cycle. So I don't have all that. I don't have all that data. I would say I'm leaning more towards not banning than banning, because I just don't like. I don't like the precedent that sets relative to other platforms, and I would hate the tit for tat where we can't go live with any other products in other countries, because they can have a similar take, especially when it comes to AI, which I think is actually going to be where these conversations go in the short to medium term. But I don't have I have to spend more time going through their kind of privacy policies and maybe get some inside baseball on the algorithm.
Yeah, do you think it actually violates the First Amendment if it does?
I think it may. I think it may violate it, but I think that's kind of where I don't have a great answer, right? My answer is still kind of in that gray area. Yeah. One thing I'm curious about, and I wonder if you have any opinions on this, is like, if you're a creator and you've built this massive following on this platform, and you've dedicated, years and years of blood, sweat, and tears to put content in there, and hundreds of hours, and monetize it, and for some people making a living, or other people, selling goods, etc., and that is stripped away, right, relatively quickly.
Right.
What would be your advice of what to do as a creator, or at least in this kind of interim, almost purgatory period right now? How would you think about that?
I mean, it's to me, and you should always diversify, I think, your channel approach. It seems like they should be trying to migrate their user base to YouTube's Shorts algorithm, or Instagram Reels, or Twitter, and try to play around with those and try to build their user base so they can kind of diversify their revenue and income stream, because I would hate to be completely reliant on one of their income. So, and their following, I think most of them know that now. Whether that it translates is a whole nother story, because I know the algorithm is very different. Like, TikTok trends don't translate to YouTube. I've seen that. Up front, like, there are a lot of like things that happen on TikTok and inside jokes on TikTok that just don't make it to any other platform. So I think it's easier said than done. I think being the master of every social media platform is like really hard.
Incredibly difficult.
It is really hard. Like when you get on one and you understand kind of how it works and you develop an audience, it's not easy to migrate them.
It's not going to translate in the same way across all platforms, for sure.
Yeah, and you've seen. I mean, we've been in a number of businesses now. Generally, you're reaching different people on each platform. It's not the same. You think it is. You're like, hey, people that follow me on Instagram probably do on Twitter and YouTube as well. And they don't. It's very different. They're completely different groups, and you have to do kind of every channel uniquely for each channel, which makes our jobs really hard in terms of growth and marketing, and you need a channel approach that's unique to that channel. You can't just create one piece of content and just share it on it across all the different platforms.
Yeah, definitely. I totally agree. I think you have to have a vision and strategy for each channel and have a compelling reason for people to go to those different channels to get
Right.
to access that content, or else you're just like repurposing content across all channels, and that's gonna cause stagnant engagement. In my
Yeah, it's just not
experience,
good.
but
I mean, look at Mr. Beast. Like, he's great
Yeah.
on YouTube, and I mean, I wouldn't say he's like terrible in the others. It's just not the same level of engagement.
I wonder, like, and this kind of ties into, I think, another conversation we either had, like, one episode before, maybe the prior one, around, ownership of your audience. And the way I want to frame this, particularly for you, with like your really strong life cycle marketing background, kind of think of it in the Web 2 way, which is, okay, well, what would be the best way in the kind of the Web 2 thinking of managing your audience? All right, well, it's probably still emails, right? Like in terms of, a way to kind of capture information in your audience and trying to take that, so you could take that across any channels. At least you had that, so you can kind of engage with that audience if you get deplatformed, et cetera. And there's Web3, leveraging the blockchain and being able to maybe go even more seamlessly across platforms and maintain those audiences. So like, maybe if you're maybe also putting yourself in the creator's shoes, how would you think about that in terms of kind of like a next step in this process of, all right, this is going to happen, and that hypothetically this, not necessarily this can happen on other platforms, but just conceptually you can lose access at any time. What would be some next steps that you would take?
I mean, email, like, to me, email is a big one. Like, somehow having the ability to capture everybody's email address so you can continue to communicate with people. Because, I know not everyone uses email, but everyone has an email address. So I think it may not be the daily engagement that you'd want, but at least you have some way of reaching out to them. I would definitely start there. And then I know a lot of others have started Discord channels and started, Telegram or whatever WhatsApp, whatever medium that your community likes. Getting them there and getting some one-to-one interaction there, I think, is key. Like the thing you want is to be able to reach people in places they are, and that's really tough if the channel that you're normally reaching them is no longer available. So you got to find a way. Like, this is part of the diversification of your channels, right? Like, getting them on Twitter and TikTok and YouTube and all of the others is great, but you're still relying on that network. Whereas if you grab an email address, you can ping them kind of the old-fashioned way. And then if you really want to go old-fashioned, those that have a merchandise shop, you get their physical address, and you could mail flyers and mail things to them, which obviously is tricky, but at least you're paying customers if you're through a merch business, interacting with people that way, saying, hey, make sure you find me on this, with an insert or a postcard. It's still going to be useful. I read all my mail. I don't get much anymore, so when I get it, it's useful. Like,
yeah, no, that's totally true. I love that kind of thinking
costly,
around offline
like,
channels.
When you get something, you actually I think you got to kind of go backwards, and go back to like the old school email and direct mail.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, right? Like, maybe I was thinking as you're talking, kind of like a thought experiment is also, okay, well, you have these platforms that are controlled by, YouTube and TikTok, Instagram, et cetera, but you have these creators whose content drives a lot of the time spent on these different platforms. And what if a collective of, let's just take YouTube, for example, if Mr. Beast and four or five other people with the highest engagement just say, hey, we're going to create our own platform. And the cost of managing tools, and they have money so they can bring in engineering and product talent, et cetera, and create a mobile app or create a web app experience, et cetera, and recreate some of the elements of these platforms and not have to worry about losing their audience. Would you say that that's a strategy that could also potentially work, or that may happen down the line? Or do you think that relative to being able to leverage YouTube as that kind of channel that has all the audience, like as a marketplace, is still better for creators like that who are driving a lot of usage?
I mean, it seems like it would be better at it, but we don't know, right? Like, it's tough. You can look at Thread. You think Twitter going to X and then Threads coming in, that didn't quite work. Shorts on YouTube is still kind of hit or miss. But then on Snapchat, when they added stories on Instagram, it killed Snapchat. So
Yeah.
like it's hard to sort of predict where this thing is going. So I feel like you just kind of need to be on the bleeding edge here and like trying all the things all the time and seeing what catches traction and then step on the gas. I think, me and you always do that at work, right? Which is you kind of try different things, and when you see something that shows some promise, you focus more on it, and hopefully you can grow that channel.
Yeah. There are. I don't want to get political, but I am curious. Like a lot of the user base on TikTok is younger, and it's like Gen Z folks.
Yeah.
And what do you think this ban does to kind of the political discourse? Because I know that it's interesting because apparently Trump before was saying, "Hey, we need to ban this TikTok thing," and now he's kind of pulled back. And my sense is actually, I think one of his major campaign donors has a pretty large shareholder in ByteDance, so that may be why his tune has changed a little bit. But if this kind of happens, during the time of the Biden administration, do you think this kind of hurts them politically?
Yeah, I would guess it would. Well, it is interesting. I don't think, I know TikTok skews younger, but I think 167 million, like that's a lot.
That's
of
everybody,
people.
kind of. Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty much everyone. So I mean, whether or not the core user base is that young is a different question. But I think the vast majority of people are now on TikTok. So I think it absolutely is a great move for Trump if he's like, hey, you know what? I'm going to get on the other side of this. So people that care about TikTok, which is a lot of people, I'm going to try to win their vote, which is totally something he would do, and then totally something he would back off of once he wins. For him, that's an easy play, right? Like I'm gonna do this to get votes, and then I'll reverse it when I get in once I get the votes. So that's kind of the way he moves.
Yeah. So maybe one additional question is like, you talked about like shorts before and Instagram Reels, like these other platforms. Who do you think is the ultimate? Like, let's say, okay, so tomorrow TikTok is banned. Who wins? Is it YouTube? Is it Instagram? Do they both win?
I think it's YouTube. I would guess YouTube would come out with a separate app that's just for shorts. That's more like similar to TikTok in its style. Yeah. And then a YouTube Shorts app. That would be my guess. For YouTube, the monetization is the key for getting content. So if they just step on the gas, if TikTok's going away, I imagine they'd put a lot more ad impressions for creators, and all the content's coming, right? All the TikTokers and be like, great, I'm just going to move over here, capitalize on that monetization wave, and boom, there you go. It's not going to be that easy, but that's kind of the route that I would imagine it would go. Whereas Instagram Reel conversion is just a little trickier for creators, I think. That'd be my guess, but I don't know. What
I don't know. I have some difficulty with this because I think maybe even 3-4 months ago I would have said, oh yeah, YouTube would be a clear winner. But I think Reels is actually, their algorithm has gotten a lot better based on time. So maybe you think of it, is it winner takes all or winner takes most? Maybe it's winner takes most with YouTube, but then Instagram gets a bump as well, and good for. I guess good for U.S. tech company like that lift, and additional ad revenue would kind of rise all tides to a certain extent. So I wouldn't be too upset about it.
Yeah, I think the eyeballs are going to go somewhere if they come off TikTok, right? I don't think diversifies across the channels.
Yeah. That was definitely kind of like the big story of this past week. Anything else kind of top of mind for you, or last kind of 5-10 minutes?
No, I mean, we were going to talk a little bit about eBay, but I think we saved that one. We have enough content here. How about we just jump in quickly? The future of dating apps. Do you want to talk about that, or?
Yeah, I think that sounds good. Sorry, there's a little bit of lag. Technical difficulties. We're still figuring things out here. So you said future of dating.
Yeah, the future of dating apps. Like, what are your thoughts?
Yeah,
both of us work at dating apps. You started one back in the day.
For better or worse. Let me set the stage on dating apps. Dating is the most difficult. I want to see if you co-sign this. I think we talked a little bit about this before, but dating is the most difficult space to be in within social consumer. Everyone who's kind of created a dating app or worked at a dating, company, relationship, business, online, would say that we got a lot of scars from doing that work. And the reason why is because if you run a dating app, it's one of the few businesses where if you do a good job, like at connecting people, they leave. If you do a bad job at connecting people, they leave. A very small percentage of your overall user base will subscribe to the platform if you have any kind of like, subscription-based products or virtual goods, et cetera. 2 to 3%. If you get like 5, you're crushing, but it won't be anything. Right. It won't be anything above that. CPMs, right. If you are advertising there, they're much lower than you would charge on kind of Google or Facebook, kind of premium advertising space. So you have to have massive scale in order for these companies to make money. It's just all to say that it's a very difficult business. And I think what's compounding it now is that especially for the younger generation, kind of Gen Z, they don't necessarily feel like these things are kind of I think they've seen kind of the challenges that dating apps have presented to like the millennial generation and just kind of the paradox of choice and, finding relationships into kind of like swiping and more of a game wasn't necessarily the greatest. I'm not necessarily knocking dating apps because I think that this also, I know a number of people, including people on my past app, who found their partner through them. So I think it definitely preserves the need, but I think that over time, as you try to drive more engagement, the mechanics become even more about gamification and more about spending time in app than actually about building relationships. What has resulted in for Gen Z is kind of a pushback on, the UI of existing platforms, and you can kind of see this in the financials of, the Tinders and the Bumbles and the Match Groups and some of the challenges they're having in repositioning. So I think the future of dating is a new. I think it's still kind of digitally focused, but I think it's a new model that maybe we don't necessarily know what it's going to look like yet, but I don't think it looks like it does now in this existing form for the younger generation because I don't think they're getting the same value from it.
Yeah, when we were there, it was always comical thinking about it because it was like, all right, as you said, if we do our job, they won't leave anyway. Yeah. So and it's almost like you're betting on serial daters. Mm-hmm. And that economy of like kind of what Tinder created, but at the same time, like we know how the sort of supply and demand works. It's like attractive people mm-hmm. are the supply, and the demand is people saying yes, I want and like that happy medium is really tough. Like mm-hmm. It's tough to find the right balance, right? Because for an attractive person to get too many inbound inquiries it's not a good experience, and to get too few is not a good experience. Mm-hmm. And so like you're constantly juggling between who and what and how to get the right balance. It's really, and that was really challenging. Would you say that was really, really challenging for us to figure Absolutely. Out? And then kind of going the route of like the really attractive people who get tons of engagement and clicks, do they become a creator as such almost because now they've got this incredible inbound traffic that they can go one to many as opposed mm-hmm. to one to one, which most dating apps. It just creates a whole bunch of things.
Totally.
But to me, it seems like the future of dating apps would be they get wrapped up into, the creator economy in terms of communities, right?
Yeah.
Like, people find themselves in that.
Yeah, I would love to kind of dive more into the data, now, and some of it is just based off reading some articles, and other based on just kind of intuition. But I think that when we were at one of the things that the company wanted to do was build a standalone live streaming platform, and that was because to try to take the churn that was coming from the app and put it into another platform that could have higher engagement and and retention because it's more of like an entertainment value proposition as opposed to dating. So like
Right.
even if you didn't necessarily meet somebody on there, you could still be entertained by people creating content. And I think in
Right.
Eastern markets within Asia, there have been these other apps like Momo, for example, that started off as a dating platform and then became more of an entertainment platform, and then the value proposition became more entertainment focused than just dating. So you'd kind of capture more of an audience there, and we were able to bring that same type of value proposition to like Meet Me, when we were there and introducing the live streaming product. So I think, yeah, to your point, I think it gets coupled with other modes of entertainment and spending time that are adjacent to dating, but maybe not that being the full focus, so that there's more of a reason to stay. It's less of just like a game of swipes. It's also an opportunity to kind of meet people in a more in a less romantic context as well, and form friendships. And I think long term, those type of models are maybe more valuable.
Yeah, yeah. It seems like that's the route, but who knows? I feel like VR is going to unlock a whole bunch of stuff
Oof,
with
yeah.
dating, but I don't know. It just changes the landscape of everything.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting to follow. We'll probably have to do like a recap based off of this
deep dive
episode.
into them.
Yeah, like definitely a deep dive, but also recap. Hey, where are we? Kind of 6 months, a year from now in the space with the new models that have popped up that kind of make more sense for this new demo. All that being said, just quickly, I think Hinge is actually doing relatively well. I think there's something about more serious, higher intention dating that doesn't necessarily feel like your mom and dad's dating platform or like the eHarmonies, but feels kind of fun and hip, but is higher intention. Is really interesting, and I wonder if more models just become more higher intention, and then the Tinders in the bubble become more of just like swipe entertainment, but not necessarily about forming relationships.
Right.
So that's kind of interesting too. But I'd have to dive back into the space a little bit more.
Yeah, hookups versus long term versus, I don't know, discovery.
Yeah.
For sure. All right, let's wrap it up there. Appreciate your time today. Like and subscribe below. We're gonna jump on every week with more questions. eBay coming soon. We're gonna talk about what you should do with your time if you're in between jobs, and how eBay can help you sort of develop your skills and potentially help you financially. So we'll talk about that.
I'm excited to learn that one personally.
Yeah, maybe Justin will actually jump in and talk about postgraduate break between high school and college and what he did with his time and how that helped mold and shape his future. So much more stuff coming.
For sure.
All right, Justin.
All right, man.
Happy March Madness.
Yes, enjoy. Later, bro.